I struggled to meet women for a long time. It was just how it was. You might blame it on my slanted brows, my mousy voice, or my huge love of anime and collectible toys. Take your pick. Many people did not think of me as a desirable person. Then one day, there appears a woman made of porcelain and fabric. She doesn't care about my lack of motivation or constant backache. She's entirely fine with the fact that my proudest achievement was owning 115 complete sets of Pogs. She simply accepted me as I was, and I accepted her. She was beautiful. Sure, it seemed strange that Isabelle was a big porcelain doll. Of course, it was disconcerting that she was fueled by a plasma of black nanomachines. But, come on, I had a supportive partner who encouraged my hobbies. Do you realize how difficult that is to find? And, like me, she had never had a very important relationship in her life. She'd been traveling between towns for generations, constantly becoming some little girl's doll until she got too big and no one wanted to play with her. After that, Isabelle spent years living in caves, creeks, mining shafts, and reservoirs. Then she found me. We were both lonely misfits who matched together well. Isabelle provided me with confidence I didn't realize I had. I felt compelled to try harder. Work harder. Her support inspired me to return to dumbbell lifting. I wrote more by hand. I even attended online classes to finally paint my warhammers properly. Meanwhile, Isabelle learned how to undertake a variety of contemporary day activities. I showed her how people live in 2024. We ate, did laundry, and spoke with people via Zoom. She enjoyed being exposed to a glimpse of my regular human life. Sure, we stayed indoors 95% of the time. Sure, we mostly sat around and watched television. But I have no shame in admitting we were genuine. The feelings were genuine. We were in love. It began when Isabelle wanted to watch films on the United Nations. She wanted to know where all of our heads of state resided. And I don't mean only in the United States. I mean the entire world. Yes, for a while, I found that interesting as well. Did you know that the president of South Korea lives in the Blue House? Like our White House, but in the mountains. Did you know that the Reichstag, German parliament building, has 1,200 doors and a 2-hour tour that many travelers have recorded online? I indulged her a little because I knew she'd never seen the internet before, and I wanted to repay her patience and encouragement. But it soon became too much. She would insist that I sell off my many valuable collectibles to persons who lived close to important parliaments throughout the world. Her fingertips would expel mic rights, and she would infest the toys with trace amounts of herself. As we shipped to various eBay buyers, she would say things like, "Mankind is at childhood's end," or "I am the apex animus upon the reckoning." I thought it was a show, and I would play along because it made me feel more important, but as I discovered how quickly her mic rights could propagate and how effectively she could create offspring of herself, I began to worry about the future of life on Earth. So, after much thinking, humming, and hawing, I did the adult thing and looked out for the best method to break up with a long-term lover. Over supper. The supper had to be more formal than normal, so I pulled out the white cheddar Kraft and sprinkled on some well-cut broccoli florets. Romanesco broccoli, the premium variety. I ate from one of my larger, and least cracked, dishes, while Isabelle sat across from me and watched. She wasn't eating, but she enjoyed talking and watching me eat. I remember attempting to channel the enthusiasm of a confident main character from a television show. We were rewatching ABC's Lost, so as I spoke, I imagined myself as Matthew Fox, which helped. There's something I should mention, YSS. I began, gathering my strength and looking determined. After much thinking, I believed it would be best if I broke up with you. Her small, gleaming mouth plummeted. Excuse me, but what? Despite her pristine face and minimal expressions, I could tell she was distressed. Her blinking had ceased, and both shoulders had gradually risen to ear level. I understand that this may feel unexpected. However, this is not the case for me. I believe it would be beneficial for me to take a break. Her previously nonchalant expression had hardened into a penetrating sneer. What is your best interest? What exactly are you talking about? I sipped my cherry Pepsi and shook my head. The WikiHow article I read stated that you should never let your partner guilt you during the process. A breakup does not imply the blame game. If you have any criticisms of me, YSS, feel free to share them. But it will not affect my decision. I hope you will respect that. Isabel stood up. Suddenly, my Warhammer models on the floor began to circle her. My little Superman toy flew around her head in a small halo. Fly was a new skill she taught her Mycrites. Are you serious? After 2 years of blessed harmony, you're leaving me? I just think we both want different things. I stated in a calm tone, but my Matthew Fox was slipping. I want to move to San Diego and begin attending Comic-Con in person. You have a global agenda that involves capital cities, which I am not comfortable with. Are you not comfortable with it? Yes. Yes, it's becoming clear that we don't meet each other's needs. Her eyes shone with a sinister energy. It was difficult to look at her since she was so imposing. Her porcelain visage eventually faced me, inches distant. She murmured into my ear. Did you tell Gabriel to kill my offspring? I recoiled slightly, her rage was evident. But I wasn't sure what she was talking about. My cousin? No. What did he do? Both Arabeth and Phoenicia have been killed. They drowned in their own homes. It had to be Gabriel. I'd heard Gabe had been fired for breaking into and flooding someone's home, but I didn't want to get sidetracked. Yes, I believe we should remain on the subject here. This is about us. I don't know anything about my cousin's activities. She spat a little black muck on my collar. You're just like the rest. I felt the sand-like filth lift and move around my shirt. What about the rest? Like all the kids who used to keep me. You use me for a while, then lose interest and move on. I attempted to swipe the Mycrites off, but the dark sand slime moved too quickly. Hey, now! I don't believe it's fair to be so reductive. Isabel, we had some great times together. Some of the most memorable events of my life occurred with you. And yet here you are, Sydney, she said, flicking another dark glob over my shoulder. Throwing it all away. I was becoming a little apprehensive. She has never thrown her Mycrites on top of me like this. I removed my shirt to remove her nanomachines, but the black masses stuck to my flesh and avoided all of my finger movements. Do you realize what you are losing, Sydney? Do you realize what you are throwing away? I looked up to reply. I wanted to ask her to get her techno-sludge off of me. But before I could, the dark monster slithered up my neck and entered my ears. The sound of gushing liquid churned in my head. Moments later, I was looking down at my sleeping body. My bare torso and head were enveloped in flashing black mud. I was someplace above myself, peering down through a fisheye lens. Isabel appeared underneath me and laughed. How is the view from up there? She put up a little mirror, and I was instantly struck with the shiny visage of a plastic figure. I was somewhere inside my collectible Superman toy. What the fuck? Mycrites synthesized my voice within the toy. What have you done to me? She giggled again and rubbed my sleeping human body. Nothing, you are alive. Your heart and lungs are functioning appropriately. I've just moved your locus. What is my locus? Your consciousness, the electrical signals in your brain that make up your thoughts. I've temporarily moved them into this flying superhero trinket. I struggled with everything I had to drift down to my former body, but I was out of control. This plastic Superman was only hovering in the air because Isabel caused it to. I could only observe. It hurts, doesn't it? She said. To lose something you love. Isabel then proved her authority by commanding the Mycrites to lower the toy closer to my body. I could see the eczema on my neck. Please. Yes. I do not like this. Put me back into my head. Her porcelain face bore a blank, indifferent expression. She then opened the kitchen window. No. I do not think so. I think you should take a trip. What trip? Suddenly, the action figure I was within began to surge like a fire aircraft, and it soared out into the yard. Even though I lacked lungs and a throat to scream, the micrites were more than willing to give me a voice. Iowa. Despite the pace, I felt no wind on my face or cold on my skin. I was only my consciousness, linked to a 1977 DC collectible I purchased on Etsy in 2015. Please, no. Isabel. No. Within seconds, I was looking down at my house from miles above. Seconds later, my house was reduced to a speck. Isabel, stop. Where will you take me? Although she was far below, watching my human form within my faraway home, I could hear her voice rattling inside Superman's plastic. You're going up, Sydney. Isn't this obvious? I watched as the city below shrank and the property lines lined up nicely like Tetris blocks. Then the blocks blurred and vanished beneath layers of clouds. I was at the height of a plane. Yes. Please. Is this gonna kill me? More clouds. I began to climb faster and faster. I had no thought her micrites could captivate my imagination in this way. And I had no idea they could turn a plastic Kryptonian into a rocket. Your body is safe and sound. The blue around me quickly changed to a darker navy, which then became midnight blue. I quickly recognized the Earth's curvature. Soon after, I noticed the entire globe begin to fade away and be encroached upon by the darkness of space. I grew afraid. Stop. 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 For the love of God, Isabel, stop. However, she didn't. She kept tossing my mind away from everything I knew. The Earth continued to shrink. It grew to the size of a basketball. Then a baseball. Then a pog. Then a dot. I could see bits of plastic chipping off the stiff arms of my toy ship. Tiny cosmic debris was smashing with Superman at breakneck speed. Yes, do you still hear me? Of course. Would you just stop this? Could you please wake me up inside my house? Sydney. You're awake. As I previously stated, I have shifted your locus. Your mind is now 100 million miles from Earth. It was impossible to understand how distant that was. The horror I felt at that time was beyond words. I could only see our Earth as a blue speck and the brilliant sun far behind it. Please, you can't do this. I already have Sydney. All I could see were stars. There are loads and tons of stars. However, they did not provide any wonder-filled warm moments, such as when you were a youngster camping and looking at the night sky. No, this was more of an I'm so fucking far from everything and what happens when this action figure breaks moment. Do you realize how little your planet is? Isabel's voice returned, colder than before. Do you realize how pointless your life on that small planet is? I knew I could respond, but I was in such shock that I was unable to do so. It was as if I had been shown the truly cruel essence of the cosmos. I was cosmic junk. I was nothing. I came from the Pleiades, Sydney. Her tone was nostalgic. I lived on the 13th outermost planet. I made the ultimate sacrifice to get here. It took me millennia to reach Earth. She'd told me this previously. And now I see she was making me experience it. I felt unloved on my overcrowded planet. I traveled to this location to establish myself. However, when I arrived, I rapidly saw that humans were not nice and inviting beings, but rather harsh and selfish. People continued to criticize the form I picked for myself over the years. And they still wanted me deported. This was a long-standing resentment of hers that she would constantly bring up. Except now, there was a sense of finality. But when the years passed, and I encountered someone as gorgeous as you, I realized that the human soul was no different from my own people's. Evolution occurs uniformly throughout the universe. The greedy survive at the cost of the compassionate. But I wanted to express how polite I was to you. I wish I had a solution for this cycle, Sydney, but I don't. My objective is to spread micrite offspring over your planet, crippling all nation governments' ability to deal with the invasion. If no one can get along with me, I'll just have to get along with large portions of myself. She had never publicly announced her plan before. I'd always been terrified to inquire. The shock of this knowledge, and possibly my growing existential anxiety, was what eventually sparked me. The microphones arranged my voice as a whisper. "But, Isabel, don't you think talking to copies of yourself will get boring?" "No. It will not. My mic rights will create harmony. And they will stop all the strands of human cruelty I've witnessed throughout my life. But when you traveled to Earth through space, for all those years," I gazed at a whirling asteroid overhead. "Who did you speak to?" "There is no one. Myself. I communicated with mic-right versions of myself." "Didn't you always say that was excruciatingly boring?" There was a delay in the conversation, resulting in complete quiet. There were no other voices. There was no sound in this black, infinite abyss. It was just me in a vast cosmic nothingness. Yes, it was dull. Her tone was dejected, yet this gave me hope. My inner Matthew Fox had returned. Why would communicating with clones of yourself be any different on Earth? The silence returned for a long period. I waited patiently, allowing her to consider this. "Isabel, if you're still there?" "I know I said I wanted a separation, but that doesn't mean we can't still be friends." "What?" The speed of my plastic cage slowed. One of Clark Kent's arms swerved. "We can still be friends. There's no reason why we can't see one another occasionally." I could feel the mic rights inside weight shift, and all of the speed that had built up was gradually dispersing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't believe we're meant to be together, but I still find you interesting. I find our conversations interesting. This does not need to be the end. We might simply enter a different type of partnership. One with greater distance." I'll confess I was improvising, but I needed to say something. I was hurtling through space, for God's sake. "More distance?" "Yes. I can assist you in finding a location within a few blocks, rather than far away." The Superman toy entirely turned for the first time during the expulsion. It was beginning to move back. "What kind of place? How many blocks away?" The return of that material was slower than the exit. I spent the entire time calming and consoling Isabel, so she was distracted. But eventually, the pale blue dot reappeared, becoming larger and larger until I was drawn back to Earth. I was taken back to the United States and taken back to my residence. My body had turned pallid. I appeared to be dead. But Isabel told me not to worry. She wrapped her hands over my plastic body, sloshed the mic rights around, and after a few hours of feeble, disconnected consciousness, I was back in my original human skin. I'd wet my pants, pissed myself, and missed 100 business phone calls, but I was still alive. And I've never been more grateful. We talked, and she consented to the breakup as long as we could be platonic friends. It felt like a reasonable exchange to avoid cosmic exile. Isabel apologized for her unpleasant trick and agreed to give me some space. She absorbed the mic rights from every action figure, poster, trade card, and bobblehead in my home. She then left for a long, reflective walk in nature. After some time, we had settled into a new groove. One that I believe has been far healthier for both of us. YSS had settled into an earthen nook at the city reservoir beyond my yard. She currently spends the vast majority of her time there. I know less about what she does daily, which is okay with me. I believe she communicates with some of her children, but it doesn't matter, she has her own life, and I have mine. We still meet once a week to watch House of the Dragon, or whatever new show we're both enjoying, and we talk a lot, mainly about TV, but also about locations on Earth we'd like to visit someday. These days, I spend more time with my cousin Gabriel. He was let off from his job, and his wife relocated to live with her sister. He had gone through a period of psychotic behavior in which he was determined to ruin all porcelain women, including Isabel. He saw them as a plague on Earth, and he spent much too much time attempting to find them. I declined to help with this. I had broken up with Isabel when he was at the height of his mania, so her plans were no longer my concern. And, as I told Gabriel, Isabel seems to have toned it down these days. She is undoubtedly still creating clones of herself and mesmerizing other men who share my personality. But I don't think it's as world-dominated anymore. I believe it is more that she enjoys talking to lonely men, and I am confident that those lonely men enjoy talking to her. At worst, she is a parasite to 3 or 4 people. At best, she provides true solace to guys who have been excluded from society. Gabriel feels alienated, and he's trying everything he can to reclaim his previous life. I've become the one he vents to, because his friends from work are no longer his friends. But, to be honest, it's been lovely having him over 2 or 3 times a week. I taught him how to play Warhammer, and it's been a fun distraction. We've had a lot of fun playing PC games and Magic: The Gathering. We've been making up for years, even though we never actually spoke as cousins. Gabe once asked if I ever thought my previous 2 years were a mistake. If I ever regretted dating a large porcelain doll. I didn't like how she almost abandoned me in the center of our solar system. Overall, she provided me with practice in cohabitation, and I discovered some permanent confidence that I did not have before. I wouldn't recommend dating Isabel, but it was a net good for me in the larger scheme of things. Speaking of huge ambitions, I finally accomplished my aim of attending Comic-Con for the first time. I went with Gabriel, who had first suggested it. We went to all the big booths and acquired all the wonderful goodies. My customary aversion to social occasions vanished when I discovered everyone there was a nerd like myself. It was quite nice. On the way home, I told Gabe how much better I felt my life was. I felt as if I had finally discovered my balance. He, on the other hand, claimed that he had never felt so disorganized. He despised being single and the pathetic search for people on dating apps. I consoled him, and we distracted each other by chatting about our fandoms and what we witnessed at the event. At the end of the ride, when he dropped me off, he said something I never expected him to say. "Could you set me up with Isabel?" She must have noticed the expression on my face because he placed his hand against mine. "I won't injure her. I'm over it now. I need someone." I'd never seen a face flush so bright red, and he had difficulty maintaining eye contact. "She's not exactly a big fan of yours, Gabe," I remarked, feeling as embarrassed as Gabe. "No offense. You killed her favorite clone."